Shalom from Israel, I'm Ariel Ben Aram. This week we read Parshat Emor. Again, the Torah continues telling us about our connection with God, the premise, the precondition, the prerequisite to be sacred in order to be connected with God. And again, the Torah is telling us more things related to this sacredness in this portion, starting with the loss of the coin of the high priest. We have said many times, we of course have to reiterate this, that the coin, the high priest, represents the means, like our awareness of this connection that we're talking about. Just like the high priest represents, it's the person that represents this connection. That's why he is officiating in the temple. That's why he is accepting our offerings to God. It's the means. But again, we have that means in our consciousness. It's an awareness. Our priesthood is the awareness of our permanent connection with God. That's what the priest means. So all the offerings have to be brought to him. He had to check our consciousness if we are transgressing, what kind of transgressions are we making. Remember Parshat Metzorah, that we were talking about that. Like when we get contaminated, the coin is the one, so what kind of contamination have you? What kind of transgression have you committed? What kind of diversions, what way did you take? Well, it is part of ourselves. So it's not necessarily somebody that is alien to us or different than us or anything like that. It's actually part of us, it's part of the community, it's part of Israel. We have to emphasize that Israel is a unity. And there's diversity, and they create the positive potentials in every aspect of us, of Israel. But within a unity, we're one. And then the priesthood, the priests, the Levites are part of that unity, an essential part, as well as the rest of Israel. The wood gatherer, the water carrier, the judge, the healer, the artist, the soldier. This is part of this diversity, it's part of a unity. It's like a unified, harmonic, functioning unity. We have to understand the coin in that context too. One of the most important part of this unity is our connection with God. Then there's laws pertaining him that you may read on your own. Then again, immediately after the coin, you're talking about the offerings. It makes perfect sense. We're talking about this connection, what we bring to that connection. Our offerings. So what kind of, the offerings that we have, they have to be unblemished. We're offering the goodness of us to God. And when we made a sin or we're guilty of something and we want to correct our ways, we have to bring our goodness back to him. Like, hey, we committed a transgression, we did something negative. We're not going to bring you the negative stuff. We're going to bring you the goodness. We made a mistake, we fix it, we solved the problem. Now we come to you. In the goodness we want to share with you because you're good. We come from you. So we have to bring goodness. So the goodness has to be unblemished, obviously. We cannot have a partial goodness to God. We come as a whole, entire, like in wholesomeness. You can call it integrity. That's the idea. Then the offerings that are blemished are disqualified. Then again, God reminds Moses and the priest and his brother Aaron to safeguard the sanctity of the offerings and the things that we bring to the temple. our part, our contribution to the temple. It's called about it's called terumah. So we bring part of our abundance. It's like we have a field, we have to bring part of our fields. We have to bring our 10%, the second 10%, the things that we give to the poor and to the foreigners. We have to bring a goodness. Again, it's emphasized here in a different way that you may learn by yourselves as you read. So again, this I'm mentioning one more time, blemished animals. Yes, animals that are blemished. And again, after this, admonitions, warnings, commandments, one more time, this portion teaches us about, tell us about the desecration of God's name. We referred that last week. We don't think that is essential to emphasize it again. We have to pay attention, because it's like, again, the Torah is telling us again and again. God is repeating, is reiterating. So it's like, hey, we heard that last week and the week before and the week before. It's like, there's a reason why. Is be aware, permanently aware of keeping sacred our connection with God by keeping ourselves sacred. And that's the principle. Then after this preamble, it's a very, very interesting portion. Chapter 23 in the book of Leviticus starts God telling us about our holidays. It's interesting, we just end in Pesach now. Is exactly the first one in the order that the Torah is giving them to us. So there are specific provisions for every holiday that we have to follow, because God is telling us this is about my connection with you. God is telling us. So it's like, pay attention to these 3 times of the year. I mean, not just 3 times of the year. The other holidays also that are mentioned here, like Yom Kippur, like Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah, I'm sorry. So we have to pay attention to that, because these are reminders. Like every month, every other month, we are reminded to be sacred. So it's like there are no holidays. When the holidays come, it's like we have to be ready for them. And actually, the Torah is telling us to be ready for them. This is very specific. It's like you have to prepare for Pesach, you have to prepare for Shavuot, you have to prepare for Sukkot, you have to prepare for Rosh Hashanah, you have to prepare for Yom Kippur. You have to prepare for Semini Aseret. Every holiday we have to prepare, meaning we have to be aware all the time of our sacredness. And keep that sacred. That's the idea. So again, let's not take these definitions of how we celebrate these holidays as formulas, or mechanistic things that we have to observe. Are reminders that we have to do this every day. Actually, in the tefillah, in the daily prayers, we are reminded about our exodus from Egypt, Pesach, for instance. We are reminded about Sukkot, our connection with God. That He's protecting us, that He's caring for us, that He's blessing us, that He's giving us the Torah in Shavuot. So we are reminded, and we are commanded to remember things every day, every morning, besides the praying, in the prayers. So this sounds like a hard work, but it's not about hard work, it's about awareness. It's like, once we know who we are, there's nothing to learn. We know already who we are, and we act accordingly. So it doesn't become like a burden that I have to do this, that I have to do that. It just flows freely and expanding. That's what we have to achieve in our consciousness. So we have to get to that freedom, the freedom of knowing who we are, and enjoy that freedom, the freedom of love, the freedom of goodness, the freedom of living in truth, righteousness, grace, loving kindness, compassion. That's freedom. This is real freedom. Now, when we are not free is when we are dependent or capped up into ego's fantasies and illusions and negative trends in consciousness. Then we are not free. We know that we're addicts. We know that we're obsessed. We know that we're frustrated. We know that we're angry. We are enslaved into this state. We are not free. We are not happy. We know this. This is not discovering cold water or inventing hot water. It's there. It's just common sense. We have to pursue freedom. So we don't have addictions. So we don't have attachments. I mean, attachment and addiction to things that are negative, obviously. We have to walk all the way around. We have to become obsessed and addicted and attached to goodness. Because in them, in this goodness, lies our freedom. So let's understand this connection with God as our freedom. Our detachment from what we don't need. Our detachment from that feeling or belief of lack that make us act in the wrong ways. Envy, coveting, greed, lust, indifference, indolence, wrath, pride. This is things that isolate us from the goodness that life is. So let's understand these holidays as opportunities that God is giving us to be more close to Him. It's like, you are close to me already, do it more. So we go 3 times to Jerusalem, to the temple, to bring our offerings, just to reiterate this closeness, these peace offerings that we bring, which are about wholesomeness, about totality, about this encompassing unity that is God, in which we are part of. So we start with Pesach, the festivals. Then after the Pesach, we started actually the first day of Pesach. We start the counting of the Emor for Shavuot. 49 days. Again, a preparation to receive the Torah. We have said that the Torah, Shabbat, Israel, and God are one, together. We form part of the same unity. We have to prepare in order to be part of that. We have to be sacred. We have to consecrate ourselves to goodness. So there's a process. So our sages say we have to bring barley. That's what you have to bring every day. The barley offering. To why barley? You can bring wheat, or barley is the food for animals, basically, in those times. So it's like, we're not animals anymore. So we have to bring what is for animals to the temple, to the priests, so they can burn that. So it's like this animal part in us. And by animal part, we're talking about lower basic instincts. We are human, we are multidimensional, we have negative tendencies, we have animal tendencies. Sometimes we unleashed without control. So that's the barley, that's the animal food. So we have to consecrate, we have to transform that. We have to redirect those aspects of consciousness into the right ways. So this is a process of cleaning ourselves. It's an individual and collective also, of course, process. But again, it starts with us as individuals. We have to clean, separate this animal tendency, this animal food from us, in order to be ready for that 50th day called Shavuot. Matan Torah is the giving and the receiving of the Torah. So we are receiving God. We're receiving the Torah. So we have to be ready. We have to prepare. God is telling us, 49, you have to count. You have to prepare yourselves. It's like you are entering a sacred realm, God's realm. The Torah, basically. You have to get ready for the Torah. I don't give you the Torah, just you have to prepare for it. You first have to go out from slavery. So he took us out of slavery, cross the sea, come to the desert, and then get ready to be part of this unity that we were talking about before, Shabbat, Israel, Torah, and God. So let's not take our identity for granted. Let's not take God for granted. Let's not take the Torah for granted. Let's not take Shabbat for granted. This is very, very important. It's like we have to realize, like, not taking for granted is like valuing it. It's like finding what is the value in this. The value of who we are. The value of our identity that God is giving us as Israel, as His chosen ones. You have to work for that. So we count 49 days, 7 weeks. And then we do the process to correct, to redirect, to reorient our consciousness into goodness, for the sake of goodness, for the purpose of goodness. That's the whole point. So we have the Emor, then explains what is the process. You can read it. Then from there we jump to Rosh Hashanah. So it's the first day of the new year. You remember that we have 2 years. One that starts in this month, in Nisan, it's the first of the months, because it's the month of our freedom from Egypt. And then we have a first year, which is starting Tishrei, as the new year. So we celebrate it as a new year, like calendar year. But our first month is Nisan. It's the month of our liberation. So then from there we go to Sukkot. We build these huts. Again, God wants to remind us when He protected us, when He was with us in the desert. A cloud during the day and a column of fire in the night, protecting us. We were completely dependent on Him, as we are. We still are. We always have been dependent on Him. We just check the air. The moment we stop breathing, that's it. He is sustaining us. So we cannot also take air for granted. It's a reason why we're here. So then He wants to remind us, it's like, hey, you were in this little hut, you had nothing but me, says God. I fed you, I took care of you, I protect you from the sun in the middle of the desert. It's to remind us that that's the way He is with us always. Not just on Sukkot, not just in the desert. It's to make us aware of this. Let's be aware of that. that we belong to Him, that we're His people, we are His creatures. And let's honor that by being aware of that every day, every moment of our lives. And enjoy the goodness that is being under God's protection. God's love, loving kindness, compassion, care. Then after that, the 7th day of Sukkot, you go to Shemini Atzeret. And again, the Torah is telling us how every holiday comes. And then we go to chapter 24, where he's talking about, it's very, very interesting, because after the holidays, suddenly, new chapter start talking about lightening, the kindling of the menorah in the temple. In this case, the Mishkan, the tabernacle. So it's like we're talking about this light. It's like being with God and our awareness with God, about our connection with God. It's light, it's a light. I mean, we are enlightened by being connected to God. We are enlightened. This is a light. Then we have to kindle that light. Every day, you have to keep them lit all the time. That's a symbolic aspect again. It's like another symbolic aspect of our permanent awareness of our connection with God. So the menorah is reminded here. So Aaron shall arrange it from evening to morning before Hashem continually, an eternal decree for your generations. On the pure menorah shall he, the Kohen, Aaron in this case, arrange the lamps before Hashem, and again it's emphasized continually, meaning permanently. Then after that, the showbread. In other words, after the holidays, immediately, boom, we go to the temple. Why? Because these holidays are related to the temple, are related to Jerusalem. Therefore, because they are related to the temple, the Torah is mentioning again the service in the temple. Because we bring our offerings, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, into the temple. So, it's perfectly understandable that the Torah is again mentioning the service in the temple. And continues, before it ends, with the blasphemer. In other words, with this blasphemy. It's again, last week we were talking about that also, the desecration of God's name. Like, again, we cannot blemish, we cannot corrupt, we cannot contaminate our sacredness. So sacredness is our common connection, common bond with God. So there's no space for blasphemy here. But again, but God is reminding us, like, hey, you may forget, by the way, all this connection and all the holidays and everything, you still can forget. And commit blasphemy, meaning breaking our connection, basically, with Him. So we are reminded, blasphemy. Like, this is about us. God is sacred, it is in His place, and no problem with that. So it's reminding us that you are my children, you come from me. We have a bond. Don't blemish it. Don't do blasphemy. Don't disrespect. Don't tarnish this connection, this identity. So this tells us about who we are. So again, the whole issue here is about identity. It's about who we are. What defines who we are? Is it goodness? Is it anger? Is it depression? Is it pain? We have to make choices here. Yeah, but we can blame others. Say, this is the society, the television is telling me to do this, to do that. Society is telling me to, it's just, yeah, you're a slave of society. You're a slave of consumer society. You're a slave of political correctness. You're a slave of light culture. And so on. You are a slave of frustration. You're a slave of depression. You get your freedom. How do we free ourselves? The goodness is our freedom. Every time that we have a problem, we're provided with goodness. For goodness, we're free. At least temporarily. It's like, wow, this person came to help me out of love, out of compassion, out of solidarity, to get me out of this state. But again, it's a reminder to do it ourselves first. It's like, this is the meaning of what we were saying last week about setting aside part of our harvest to the poor and the foreigner. It's like we have to give goodness so people can start having goodness and being goodness too. It's not just a receiving process. It's just a reminder about who we are. And then choose to be who we are. So let's take these festivals, let's not do it as a mechanistic. It's a holiday. We don't work those days. We're going to go to the beach, we're going to go to the sea, we're going to go to entertain ourselves for a while. Or for those who are observant, it's like, oh, I'm going to do it again. I have to clean for Pesach. I have to do this. I have to build the sukkah. I have to count every day. So I will do it, so God will reward me for this. It doesn't work that way. We are rewarding ourselves by doing them. They have to make sense to us. So we flow with it. This is very, very fundamental. It's going back to the counting of the Emor. So we start counting one day, and this Kabbalistic inner process that some of us do during the counting. We have said that in the book of Zohar, they talk about 10 traits or qualities that are part of our consciousness. So they divide it in 3 and 7. So the first 3, like at the top 3, which are defined as Chokhmah, Bina, and Das, which means wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So it's like they belong to the spiritual realm, a higher realm, in this case, in our own consciousness. It's not out of us, a part of us. And then the remaining 7, they call it emotional traits or emotional qualities. I don't know why they call it emotional, but that's the way they say it. And these are Hesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Hayesod, and Malchut, which means loving kindness, severity, power, try to get another definition so we don't get trapped in some of the concepts. But I think the severity in terms of order, like keeping order, that's the closest meaning that we get to Gevura, which means power. But it's a power that implies some kind of restriction, like refraining from. They say that the real power that we have lies on our ability to refrain ourselves from such power. So it's like power without control. This is not power. It destructs everything. It's absolute. So in this case, Gevura, the second one, let's take it as severity in terms of ordering, like establishing an order. So we have loving kindness in abundance, encompasses everything. But then we have to put an order in that loving kindness. That's Gevura, the next one. And then we have Tiferet, the third one, which is the result, the outcome of this blending, of this putting in order loving kindness. So it's called Tiferet, it's called beauty, truth, like harmony. It's like everything is harmonious, everything is functioning harmonically. That's Tiferet. That is Israel, by the way. Jacob, Israel, represents Tiferet. So we have said that loving kindness is Abraham, Gevura is severity, power is Isaac, and then the functioning, the harmonical functioning, the unity of a functional harmonic unity is Jacob, Israel. And then we go to Netzah, which means triumph, which represents Moses. Triumph is the triumph of will, it's the triumph of goodness, it's the triumph of the Torah. It's like the triumph of making consciousness aware that God is the ruler. So it's the triumph, it's a victory. It's like Moses represents victory because he was a victor. He triumphed. He delivered the Torah. He led us out from Egypt. The guy was a winner, basically. He was. So that's Netzah. And then Hod, which is honor, glory, represented by Aaron, the high priest. Yes, it's about honor. It's about glory. Because our connection with God, represented, as we have said, by the priest Aaron, is about glorifying God. It's about being with God as one. This honor. Then we have Hayeso, which is the foundation. It's like the fundamental, it's like the base, the structural base, represented by Joseph. Viceroy of Egypt. It's like, it was called Joseph Hasadik. It says Joseph the Just. The guy was righteous. So righteousness is the base of everything. It's the foundation. And then in that basic foundation, the next and last of these seven is Malchut, which means kingdom, represented by King David. That's the messianic consciousness as the expression of the previous ones, the previous qualities. So it's like the material manifestation of the above, the six above, actually. We will say it in this case, the nine above. And our mystic sages say that Malchut, the last one, connects with the first one. Up, forming a unity. So, these mystic sages in the book of Zohar, in the Kabbalah, they tell us that we have to count the seven, not the 10, the seven, meaning from Hesed to Malchut. We have to count one for every week. That's seven, so a week for each one. So we start with the Hesed, with loving kindness, then we start counting the first day. Is the loving kindness of loving kindness. That's the first day. Then the second day is the power of the severity of loving kindness. The third day is the splendor, the harmony of loving kindness. Then the victory of loving kindness, the glory of loving kindness. the foundation of loving kindness and the kingdom of loving kindness. That's the first week. And the second week would be the power or severity of loving kindness, the severity of severity, the severity of harmony, the severity of victory, the severity of honor, glory, the severity of foundation, the severity of the kingdom, and so on. So the idea here is to, according to mystic sages, is to reorient, correct the goodness of goodness, the loving kindness of loving kindness, the severity of loving kindness, and so on. So it's like we are entitling, we are empowered, enable in us, our consciousness, to correct and make these things harmonically working, or these qualities. The foundation, the kingdom, the severity, the power, the harmony, the victory, the loving kindness. So it's like once we harmonize these 7 emotions, as they call it, then we are prepared to receive the Torah. You are prepared to connect back to the spiritual ones that are giving us the awareness of God, which is wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. It's like everything makes sense then. Then we have all these 10 unified harmonically to function for a purpose. So it's not just to do it. No, we have to do it in order to pursue a goal, a destiny that God wants us in this plan called the Torah, which is goodness. Just make goodness prevail. We spoke about that last week. Parashat Kedoshim, we have to be sacred because God is sacred. Love your neighbor as yourself, etc. This is what it's about. So it's interesting that the preamble of Parashat Emor, the previous Parashat is Kedoshim, is we have to be sacred in order to enter the realm of sacredness. This makes perfect sense, by the way. It's like when we enter in a club, there's some rules. We have to wear a tie or whatever the rules are in order to enter. And then we are welcome. And not just welcome, we have to participate according to the rules of the club. It's like we can see many examples about that in life, in which we have to prepare ourselves in order to enter a particular situation. This is very, very simple here. But in this case, we're talking about God. We're talking about our identity. We're talking about our own ground rules and guidelines. It's about who we are, and then we flow with them. And this club is the Torah. So remember, I'm Jewish. I follow the Torah. Full member. That's who we are. We cannot take that away from us unless we renounce or ignore it or whatever. But of course, again, it's a matter of choice. We always have choices. Every moment we have to choose. Then let's make the right choice. Just be sacred. So, with this we end this brief commentary on Parashat Emor. We hope that, again, we remind ourselves to get this awareness, this knowledge, let's make it ours. Let's embrace them as part of us, like a hand, like an eye, like the air we breathe. And then we will see the results within our consciousness. We start being and acting more kinder, more compassionately. And then we feel the goodness, and then we find freedom, our true freedom in this goodness. And then we realize that we have everything. That we don't lack anything because we have what what makes sense to everything, which is goodness, which is love's ways and attributes. That's our destiny. That's our legacy. That's our life. Let's live it. Let's enjoy it. Let's share. Let's be good. Let's be happy. Let's be loving. Okay, so have a great, blessed weekend, abundantly blessed. A very insightful and restful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. And until next week.